Hello and welcome to Productivity Nerd, a podcast all about getting shit done, hopefully in an elegant way that doesn't leave you too broken. In our crazy worlds, we're all about balancing the need to work enough to make ends meet, enough not to annoy our bosses, but also enough that we feel like we've done enough, which can be a whole different psychological and emotional ballgame, along with the human need to rest and stay well. Plus, on top of that, we'd quite like to enjoy ourselves, maybe just a little bit along the way, spending quality time with those we love. I, for one, love hearing about how people get that balance and work more efficiently so they have more time to do the things that they love. Hello and welcome back to Productivity Nerd. I'm Kathy Soulsby and today we're talking about AI. Not here is how to use AI. There are approximately 4,000 podcasts doing that already. No, this is more honest than that. It's about where we actually are with it. What's working, what isn't working, what it might do to the kind of work that people like us do. And whether the whole thing is in fact as transformative as everyone keeps insisting it is. Or are some of us just literally asking it a question, then running away? Helen sent me a newsletter yesterday. AI is a slot machine, and I couldn't put it down, which tells you either that it was a very good newsletter or that my evenings are a bit crap. It's by Ruben Hassid. We've added the link in the show notes, and we're going to use that as a starting point today because it's quite an interesting conversation. I'm joined today by two people. You know one, Helen Taylor. She edits the podcast. She keeps the ops running. She basically holds things together when I am not. She's been my reality check on most things for longer than I care to admit. And we're joined also by a guest, Chris Davies. Chris is a fellow VA. He is a tech specialist. He's got 22 years of international experience doing this kind of stuff. And he works with small businesses and solopreneurs on automation and AI. So he knows his oats when it comes to all things techie. So let's crack on and talk to everybody. Hello and welcome back to Productivity Nerd. I'm Kathy and today we're doing something a bit different. It's a panel. So I've got both Helen and Chris with me, which means I'm outnumbered in the techie stakes. Probably going to learn some stuff. Helen, obviously, we all know she's the reason anyone actually gets to listen to this podcast because she does all the editing and the techie bits. And Chris, so Chris is a fellow VA and a bit of a tech specialist who helps small businesses and solopreneurs use automation and obviously AI. So quite a lot of tech expertise in the room, which is not me. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. So AI. We're doing it. We've done it before a bit, but we're doing it again because AI moves really fast in the world. And this isn't really a sort of how-to. It's more of a general discussion. And I want to start with a newsletter that Helen sent me this morning by Ruben Hassid. And the subject line was AI is a slot machine, which is either a very depressing take or a very useful one, depending on how you're feeling at the time, right? But his argument is that most people open an AI tool, they ask it one thing, they get an answer, they take it away and they close the tab. And that's why they think it's overrated. The people who are actually getting proper value out of it treat it like a gambler. They generate loads, they throw most of it away, and they pick the bits that work. And the volume is the workflow. But the other thing that I really liked in this newsletter, a lot of information for one newsletter, I thought. Going to sign up for this. Good content.
I'll put the sign up link in the show notes.
Yeah, really, really interesting. The other thing was him mapping the whole journey that us humans are going on with AI into the 5 stages of grief, which felt really accurate. So, in case you can't picture it in front of you, those stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So, thinking about that, guys, are you both in the acceptance phase now?
Yeah, probably. It's
Yeah.
something where I think if you're not accepting it for where it is, then you're going to be in a very dark place in a few years' time.
Chris,
There's a
you must be.
yeah, there's a challenge with this kind of framing that the we tend to fall into a lot of hyperbole when we're talking about AI. We tend to have very catastrophist takes, either one way or the other. And when we frame it as grief, we're going to see it through the lens of grief in that regard. I would say that it's the same as any business risk, basically. It's the same as any business risk. If you have something that is potentially existential to your business and you know about it and you don't do anything about it, then of course you're going to have challenges. If you know about it, you learn about it, you adapt to use it, and you bring it on board, then you're going to have a very different experience. So how we frame the discussion is a big part of how people are going to look at the possibilities of the technology, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely still, surprisingly, years and years and years on from when I thought most people had kind of started embracing AI, there are still some people who I think are very tech savvy who go, well, I don't really use it. I'm not sure what I'd use it for. And I'm, oh my God, what are you not using it for? So let's get on to that. How do we actually use it? The kind of practical stuff. So the most basic, I suppose, that we probably all start with to a certain extent is writing, whether that's drafting something from scratch, whether that's improving something we've written, making something look prettier with a bit of reformatting, whether that's an email, a proposal, LinkedIn post. Most people kind of tend to start their AI journeys here. Would you say that was how you first dipped your toe in the water, guys?
Pretty much, I would say, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Helen?
Yeah, it was LinkedIn posts that I couldn't put something into GPT at the time, and it spat something reasonable out. But I think a lot of people use it in their daily lives. So I don't know, I've got this food left in my fridge, what can I make with it type things as well. I think there's lots of people using it for work, but actually a lot of people come at it in their personal life first, maybe, if you're not tech savvy.
Yeah, or if, for example, one of the people I was thinking of who doesn't really use it for work, the reason he doesn't use it for work is because it's a very highly secure environment. And actually, you're only allowed to use Copilot, which only does things in it's just the availability of it to do stuff in that environment is quite limited. So there you are going to start with, can you, write me an advert for my local paper to advertise, our new under 15s football team or whatever. You're more likely to use it for personal stuff if you physically aren't allowed to use it for work. So I think some people had to start at it that way. Chris, you talked before about, and we all have all sighed when we've looked at LinkedIn, AI fatigue. Yeah, there was no AI, then there was a bit of AI, now there's a lot of AI, and you can kind of see it, and everybody knows to a certain extent what an AI generated LinkedIn post looks like, and people will roll their eyes. Are we getting to the point where actually we just need more humans now?
I think fatigue goes in both directions. It's an interesting word here. AI fatigue is definitely a thing. If you look on LinkedIn, and for example, if I see something on LinkedIn that's obviously been AI generated, which is the overwhelming majority of content on LinkedIn right now, I won't read it. My perspective for me and for the clients that I'm working for is if a human didn't write it, then a human has no business reading it, and they shouldn't waste their time and things like that. There's very, very little effort for most people who are using AI for that to actually humanize that content. So the way that I would use the AI is I use it for drafting, I use it for ideas, I do an adversarial review with it so I can see what's going to work and what's not going to work. Then it will draft a post, and then I will go through the post and rewrite it and humanize it. So that takes longer, of course, but it's still a time saving compared to what it would be to have to research and write this whole post yourself. You get the benefits, but you also don't have the slop factor, let's say, where you're just producing everybody's churning out the same kind of nonsense with the M dashes, and they've got the short punchy sentences and the antithesis statements like it's not this, it's that, and things like that. And as soon as you see it, this AI is garbage and it's not worth reading.
Yes, little emojis. Yeah,
exactly. Emojis very commonly. That was a previous thing for that. But on the other side, fatigue comes from things like drafting fatigue or decision fatigue, and this is something that AI is very good at helping us with, where drafting fatigue, I don't know what to write, I've got a blank page and I don't know what to do, and what do I do there? Or what post should I choose? And you don't have the emotional energy that you need to make that choice because it's a Friday afternoon or whatever it is like that. That kind of fatigue AI can very much help with. So two sides of a related coin, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like using AI to, obviously we'll train it, but to say, right, whether it's, if it's a LinkedIn post, generating ideas, it's brilliant. You go, right, these are the kind of people I want to talk to. What kind of things are they going to be interested in? But also, this is my post. What is this avatar or that? What are they going to make of that? Is that going to be of interest to them, or do I need to change it? I quite like from an email point of view as well, though I did have somewhat of an argument with it earlier about some feedback I'm going to give somebody, and I'm like, that's really nasty. You can't say that. And he's like, is it nasty though, or is it accurate? I was like, no, it's accurate. It's just we're British. No one would send that email. Just no one. You've got to fluffy it up. I mean, it's quite an interesting conversation, but yeah, no, I think we're coming to the point now where if you are not clever with your AI usage on socials, it's really obvious to people who are more savvy. So writing, obviously, a very big thing, whether that is social media posts or emails or whatever. And yeah, it's useful, right? Admin and ops. So this is where you guys come in to the fray. Um, we're quietly saving quite a lot of time with things like meeting notes, contracts, summarizing long documents. That's kind of the thing. Chris, you're big on this. You're kind of what little catchphrase is trust but verify, which I quite like. Talk to us about that.
Sure. The idea that I have when working with these machines is you treat it like a capable and enthusiastic, but not very knowledgeable or not very experienced employee. So when you get it to do something that's business critical, like you want it to summarize a document or you've got it to research some figures or something, you have to verify the output as well, just like you would with a regular employee. And I find it helpful to think about it in that way, because if you think, well, would I let my intern do this unsupervised? Then the answer is no. Then you can put a little bit more supervision into it. Basically, everything that I do, if there's a number, I verify the number. If there's a stated important fact, I verify the fact from a different place, just like you would with an intern's report. And I find it helps to avoid situations like I was translating a legal document here about 6 months ago for somebody, and I used AI to go through it and set it all up. And then I was just comparing the translation. It saves a lot of time just to be able to compare. Yes, this is correct. This is correct. So page 1 correct, page 2 correct, page 3 correct, page 4 was completely invented and was entirely untrue. Page 5 correct, page 6 correct, and things like that. And if you don't check it, then that goes to the client. And that's what you really can't afford, because that trust is gone as soon as you supply something to a client that looks like that. So that's basically my approach to using it successfully now, is treat it like an employee that's capable but doesn't have a lot of experience, and you've just got to check it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And Helen, obviously your ops as well, automations and speeding up processes. How does it help you, and what kind of checks and balances do you put in to make sure it's not going off on a little tangent of
Absolutely the same thing
inertia?
Chris has said. You have to read it through. One of the things that actually came out of that newsletter I shared with you is, if you're asking it to create a report, is you need to know more or less what the answer is first. The first time you set it up, have a good idea what you expect that answer to be. And then when it comes out with its response, ask it how it got there. So something I did this morning was around looking back at the last month's finances, feeding in various spreadsheets, but I already knew what the answer was going to be. But I wanted to set it up to do it every month. And we went through it, we being Claude and I. And Claude came up with some fudgy numbers. So we went through, how did you get there? Why have you done this? Ignore that. Don't do it like this. And it probably took a good hour and a half to get there this time, but every month it's going to be a lot quicker. I know I wouldn't ever send it on without having checked it, but it's as Chris said, it gets you through that starting gate
Yeah.
and stops you having to do it all manually.
And that is, I think, a really interesting point, and it's something we say to our clients about delegating, right? Is it takes longer upfront. And I think people think AI is going to be super quick, and it's like, oh my God, this has just taken me an hour and a half to do this. And it's like, well, and that may be a waste if you're doing it for a one-off and you could have done it yourself in an hour and a half. But if this is something repeatable, or the information you're feeding it is going to be useful for a future task, then it's worth putting in the effort. But actually, if you spend 7 minutes giving it the information and it spits out something pretty mediocre, that's sort of to be expected. If you end up having these long conversations, and I know I sit there going, how have I just spent 2 hours doing this? This is painful. But actually, I'm got to a better place at the end of those 2 hours, and I know that next time I come to do that task, either I can more or less push a button and it will repeat it, and it might take me 15 minutes instead of 2 hours. But I think that is the risk, isn't it? That people aren't willing to put in that effort up front to train the intern, right?
Cool. Yeah, there are various fun little techniques that you can use to make it better as well, like context setting. There's a design pattern called human in the loop design, which is basically where there are periodic steps that a human is required to check the output of what's going on. And I like to split my stuff up into, I do context at the first. I tell the AI what I expect of it, what I need, and then I will literally feed it the context. I'll give it the websites. I'll say, review this before we go any further, and then report back when you've done it. So then it's got a bit of context that you know what's going on. Then you get it to build the thing, and then you get it to do something called an adversarial review, which is where it goes through its own work and it checks to make sure that everything is correct. And it will improve based on your instructions. It will improve what it's already done in there. But a fun way around that is you give it to another AI and you say, hey, ChatGPT, Claude gave me this. Can you poke any holes in it? And it will identify anything like that. It gets quite, it's a bit catty at some stages. Like that, but you end up with a better result, so that when you come to do the final human review, it's much easier to go through.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a numbers game. You know, any LLM will just fire out a slightly different response, maybe contradictory, because it's just generating volumes of answers.
And it's not really thinking. It doesn't really think. It doesn't really know. It's just generating based on context and tokens, and then it creates something that looks like it's about right. And very often it is about right, but you can never guarantee it. You can never 100% say, I can guarantee that this is going to be good as client-facing work.
Interesting. Talking of which, we are now in a position where very often our first interaction with a company, if you need to get in touch with somebody because of a problem, is with a chatbot, right? That's the first layer of triage on most websites, is either fill in a contact form or do you want to talk to our bot? Now, usually my answer is no, I do not want to talk to a bot. Thank you very much. Unless somewhere down that line and fairly fast, I'm going to get to it, right, I need to put you through to a human. And you go, cool. But Chris, you've talked about kind of guardrails and she said human in the loop design again. If you as a company were thinking, right, it is definitely time for me to add some form of chatbot or AI conversation with clients on my website, what would you be asking them or telling them to think about?
It's a good question. Before we even got to that part, I would advise the client not to do that, because I think one of the biggest problems that a lot of small companies have when they're thinking about AI is they've got a very, very ill-defined concept of what return on investment looks like from AI putting in there. And they look at things like chatbots and they think that's easy to understand. I could get some value back from that. And they look at the chatbots and they think, okay, I'm going to plop this over my business processes and I'm going to call it AI and then it's going to help my business make loads of money. But it's disrespectful to the clients, really, isn't it? We come back to what I said a little bit earlier, where people buy from people. Basically, if a person didn't have a hand in it, then what business does a person have interacting with it? And if the first thing that a client says what a client sees when they interact with your company is, here is a robot, I'm too busy to bother with you, I'm not interested in what you've got to say until my robot has qualified you, I don't think that gives a brand, particularly a small brand, a very good impression. Yeah, I would argue that the AI needs to be a step back from the front line. The AI needs to be inside the knowledge base. Oh, okay, I'm a client of yours. I need an answer. How do I find this answer? And the AI facilitates that, not to be the first point of contact and not to be the first line of engagement that you're going to have with the candidate. That would be how I would think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I certainly remember a conversation with a client, and we provided a lot of sort of admin processes for them. And, he said we could have AI do a reasonable amount of this, but actually our customer interactions are fairly few and far between. So why would we miss an opportunity to wow somebody with our humanness and our personality and our great service just because we could, in theory, turn it into a repeatable process? What value does that give to somebody? Are they going to have a better day because a robot said, have a great day, where, one of our team would literally go, are you off to the football later? Or, be a human. So I think it's about picking the right circumstance, isn't it, to get that in?
So it may be a little bit of a step backwards where it does create value, but it's not the key point of contact. And then when you've got something like that, we come back to the human in the loop idea. You've got to be checking all the time. There's got to be some kind of supervision. Agentic AI is the big new thing, well, relatively new, that people are talking about, where you've got these AI agents and they've all got autonomy and they can all do certain things, but they're not just let off the leash and off they go. There's always somebody sitting above them. And you might have, I don't know, you might be responsible for 5 or 10 and you're monitoring their output and you're checking maybe 20% of the output or something like that to make sure that it's safe and that it's doing what it needs to do. Because if anything slips through, or if anything is jailbroken by a client, they get it to jump the rails and give you information that it shouldn't have. That's a big risk for your business.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? So somebody's job is basically a bit like having 5 newbies, in a call center or whatever. Actually, it's now somebody's job to manage 5 AI agents to make sure that they're doing the thing they're meant to be doing.
It's happening in other areas as well. In teaching, for example, a lot of online teachers, I mean, many of us have taught online at some point in the past, a lot of online teachers, there's less demand for us because people can do a lot of stuff with AI now. They can do a lot of their work themselves and they don't need that. And the teacher is often starting to step back from a direct teaching role into more of a learning management role. So you provide guidance and then the student gets their own AI to go on and do it. I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that come up.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
person himself that's, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and in user cases as well, of course. I'm seeing this with clients who are coaches, in that they are building kind of AI coaches based on their methodology and their teachings and all the rest of it. And these days, instead of booking a course or what we used to do, which still feels quite modern to me, and I'm sure it's not these days, you'd kind of hunt down, if you needed to. I remember when during COVID times, one of my team needed to learn how to use Miro, and we didn't know anyone who knew how to use Miro really, really well. So we kind of did a stalk on LinkedIn and some Facebook groups and went, look, we want someone who does Miro. We will pay you for a few hours of your time to download your brain so we can learn how to do this. And these days, you just go and ask AI.
Yeah, a bit of just-in-time learning is the name for that technique.
Mm.
You need something, you need it quickly, you need to get the AI to be able to do it. And I want to go back to what Helen said earlier on, where before you do that, you've got to have a good idea of what that looks like, because you could very easily be sent down the garden path by it.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the translation example. Unless you already kind of speak the language, you can't ask it to translate because it could be saying all sorts of nonsense.
Well, yeah. Yeah, exactly. But and I remember, going back to the olden days when I was a child, everyone was fairly horrified that we were allowed to take calculators into maths exams. That was how long ago that was. But I was always told, with a calculator, when you're using a calculator for a sum, you should have a vague idea what the end number should be, because it's really easy to add an extra naught. And if you don't have even the foggiest idea whether it's going to be 100,000 or 750, because you're not looking and not paying attention, then you shouldn't be using the calculator. Like, you're not going to know the exact number, but you should have an inkling.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's similar, isn't it? It's just you're using a tool, but with human common sense built in.
I think you're using a tool, and it's not a replacement for a human as much as it might look and feel like that over in basic intent. It's not, it's a tool.
Yeah.
Treat it like your calculator.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Um, and I think we've sort of touched on this as a bit in terms of brainstorming, but AI as a thinking partner, quite like this. Um, Testing decisions, asking the famous question, right, I've done this, what am I missing? That's always a good one. And Chris, you said it earlier, and you can describe it a bit better, perhaps. Adversarial review. Would you have AI do that, or would you do that?
Sure. No, I use AI as part of that process. It's me and the AI rather than just the AI that does that. But it's related to the old 10th man technique, where you've got a room full of people that all agree. There's somebody in the room whose job it is to disagree with that. The adversarial review is the kind of same thing. You're stress testing your ideas before you do it, and you do have to be careful because the machine feeds off the information that you give it. So it's likely to reflect your own ideas and your own biases back at you. But if you instruct it carefully, you can say, look, I'm trying to stress test this. I need you to poke holes in it. Imagine if you were a hostile company or something like that. What would you say is the weakness here? It helps you to get there a lot faster than if you were just doing that necessarily yourself. And sometimes it'll catch things that you might have missed as well. Yeah.
Yeah, really good.
You do need to be careful how you program it. I had a client who was complaining to me this week. Why does it always push back though? Should we should we see what you've put in your settings? It's that.
Yeah.
So just be careful. If you've asked it to do a thing, it will do the thing.
Yes, and it does for me, right? Because I put my diary in so it can summarize what meetings I need to prepare for in the coming weeks. And I am really shoddy about preparing for meetings if I feel I don't need to prepare for them, right? Sort of regular team catch-ups or whatever. And I have said in my instructions, don't let me get away with going, it's just a catch up, it's fine. So it argues with me constantly. I find myself getting irate and went, yeah, but you told it to argue with you because you know you're really bad at doing that. So yeah, you do. I mean, I don't think at all it is a bad idea to tell it, as somebody described it as, the first thing I put in is don't blow smoke up my ass, because otherwise the tendency whenever you ask it anything is it goes, oh my God, you're so clever. I can't
There's
believe you came
definitely a
up
time
with
and a
that.
place for that though, right?
Perhaps we need a separate one for that just to feel good.
Sure.
AI is an emotional support dog, maybe. Yeah. But emotional support, right? Difficult conversations. I use this a lot. I tend to get stressy if I have to, ask a client to pay me money or fret over feedback emails as I have been today. It's quite handy using something with no emotions to write something that shouldn't have emotions in. Quite like that. Do you guys use that? Or are
Well, I
you
use
not?
it exactly for the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I also have he's my personal trainer. He started using it for his emails because he was finding that people, canceling late and he wasn't charging them and all this kind of stuff. So he now gets AI to write his emails because he's like, I just get too cross with it. And I need people to know that it's important, but I need to not get on a rant about it. It's
Sure.
like,
No, definitely. No, today I found two 500 euro-ish bills from a client that hadn't been paid. And sure, yeah, I should be paying more attention to that, sure. But if I write a message, it's going to be snarky and passive aggressive and what have you, and all of this kind of stuff like that. And it's not going to help facilitate the payment, which is what I want at the end of the day. So you just get the machine to do it and you're tickety boo. Yeah.
you and I are different breeds. Mine would be like, if you wouldn't mind, when you get a minute, please, please, could you? I tend to go the other way as opposed to give me the money. Either way, machine version is better, right? It's to the point, it's
Just a
factual.
step between you and the client, which is sometimes useful. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, and certainly sometimes my role as a VA is being that buffer. I had a client today whose client said, can we cancel today's coaching session 26 minutes before the coaching session? And he emailed me and the client. And I messaged the client and went, I'm going to go back and say cancellation clause. You all right with that? And the client was like, yep. But it's much better for me to do it as that buffer than it is for the client to do it, right? Because it sort of keeps that relationship nice and clean. So there's a bit of that as well. So yeah. Um, so we've talked a lot about things we can do with AI. And why do you think some people get disappointing results with AI? They try it and they go, yeah, it's not really doing what I thought it was gonna.
I try and bring this back to this idea of return on investment a lot. I think people have got a lot of ideas about what AI is, and they don't necessarily have a good understanding of what AI is. And so that disconnect between what they want it to be able to do and what it actually can do is where a lot of this disappointment comes in. It happens a lot with small businesses that they plug it in and they don't really know what they want it to do. And then they don't see, oh, we haven't made an extra £100,000 this quarter, so we're losing money on, or we're not making the money on this. Therefore, AI is useless. But they don't have a very clear understanding of what that ROI would look like in the first place. And they don't adapt their processes, they don't train their people, they don't have clear guidelines for when to use it, when not to use it. They don't have an idea of what it really should do, and so they feel disappointed by it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think it goes back to what you put in, you get out, and the first answer's not enough. You've got to really ask a lot and train it and keep going. And what we talked about earlier, it's about volume. It will just generate answers, and you have to get a volume of answers before you get something that's more or less right.
Yeah.
And the person the client I have who's using it the most probably spent a month just training up and sorting out his AI capabilities. It's amazing. The setup he has is astonishing, but he was doing 13, 14-hour days just setting it up and tweaking it. So if you want that level of output, then you've got to input.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just turning it on, typing stuff in, and magic's going to happen, which I think is well, certainly was, back in the day, that was the kind of expectation. And of course, it can't do that unless you give it all the information, right?
And there are
like taking on a newbie in your office and going, well, why aren't you running the company yet? Because they don't know what they're doing.
There are technical ways that you can address the context problem, because it gets very expensive to feed AIs a lot of context. The token cost is the big discussion point in the industry at the moment. So much money going on tokens, and we're like, well, we're not getting the value that we want for that. And there are different technical ways of resolving that. One of them is called model routing, which is the idea that you change the model that you're using depending on the complexity of the task. And you can even, with some technologies, you can link the different models together. So the one that does the sketch is a cheap model, and then the one that does the deep research is an expensive model, and then maybe the one that does the polish is a middling model and things like that. So you can save a lot of money that way. And a lot of these things allow you to use things called markdown files as well, which is where the context basically lives in the machine, and you don't have to keep feeding it that at great expense every time. So the solutions are coming, but they're not very regular person friendly yet. They're not something that's going to be easy for an independent worker who also does their marketing, who also does their LinkedIn, who also does all of this different stuff with a client, to be able to figure that out. But the key word, as with much of AI, is yet. It's not that place yet, but there's nothing to say next year it won't be.
Yeah. Well, that is the thing, isn't it? That's why we're doing this again. We did a podcast on AI not that long after we started the podcast, and it feels like it's changed 100 times over since then. Yeah. So quick. And talking about prompting, so obviously we were talking about that newsletter earlier, which link in the notes, about Slot Machine, and how you need to give it a lot and not just take the first answer, gamble with it almost. What is a good prompt for AI? How much do you need to give it?
The great thing is you don't need to guess. I'll put it in the chat here for maybe somebody can have a look at it if we want to share this. The big companies, they generally tell you what a prompt should look like if you want to get good results from it. So it will specifically say, for this model, for this thing, you need to give it this, and this, and this is the best practices for that. Yeah, I'm sure that's not always the same between different models. If you're using DeepSeek, it's probably going to be different than if you're using ChatGPT, but you can actually review it. You can even practice. They've got things called tokenizers. So like if I'm going to put this prompt in there, how many tokens is that going to cost me? versus if
Wow.
this, can I do that? All those tools are there, but again, it comes back to the point that it's not 100% super user friendly at the moment. It's not like the first customer facing thing that you're likely to see this stuff. So you've got to figure it out yourself. Or a lot of people find themselves figuring it out themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? When um a lot of more techie tech,
Mm.
people would get somebody in to help them with the techie tech. And I think AI is one of those things. I mean, you guys aside, right? Because you work in automations. So AI falls quite naturally into that. And therefore, you may have people who are coming to you going, this is the end result I want. And you go, excellent, we can use this. And there's going to be a bit of AI joining this and this and this up to make that all work. Whereas most small business owners, I would say, are just bimbling along themselves the best they can, right? And like you say, trying to do their day job as well, because most people don't have a month to sit and sort out AI. Who does?
So, yeah. And if you don't want to do that, then I would recommend one of the human in the loop design patterns that we spoke about earlier on, which is where you break it up into sections. And instead of saying, here is the entire task, perform the entire task, context set, plan, sketch, draft, adversarial review, human review, final polish, you go through the steps, you get better results.
I love that as just a process for a big thing, right?
It's the same as an employee. You go through a process. They don't just dump all this stuff on you at the end.
Yeah, excellent. And obviously we were just talking about integration. So I am not a techie person. I can just about cobble together an email. But what impact has AI had on integrations with things like Zapier and Notion and ClickUp and all that kind of stuff? Is it making a massive amount of difference to how workflows can work?
My client who spent the month setting it all up has everything integrated. It all talks to each other. I think some of it integrates better than others. So we touched a bit on Copilot and Microsoft. That's sort of a closed system. A lot
Yeah.
of things you just can't break into it if you're using a different platform.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it all links up really nicely in one way or another. I'm probably using Zapier less now. And my general take would be if there's a native integration, use that over and
Yeah.
above a third party because it's probably going to be more stable. But from my experience, all of the AI stuff that I'm using and all the other platforms that I previously used are all talking together very nicely. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Yeah, I did have a near literal cry, and I think I messaged you and you rolled your eyes and kind of went, "Oh God, another one." The day that my Claude first talked to ClickUp and put things into ClickUp correctly as a project, I did nearly have a little weep with joy because it's such a pain doing that stuff, right?
It's great as long as you're not trying to get Microsoft involved. I can't get Claude to get into Microsoft, and Copilot makes me cry. So as long as you're out of the Microsoft environment, it's all fine.
It's all tickety boo. How about Google? Does that
Amazing.
insist on, does that work?
It works brilliantly.
Does
Google
it?
links up to everything.
Okay.
I just add a small cautionary note there that if you're doing it as a company and you're working with privileged information that you're putting around in there, you've got to be super careful. If you've got 20 different AIs or whatever working with your thing, that's 20 different privacy policies that you've got to think about. And that's something that I think a lot of companies don't think about is where's this data going? It's not super cheap because they're friendly companies. It's super cheap because they want our data and they're processing it and they know where it is. So you've got to be very careful that you know what's in those privacy policies before you start doing integrations, particularly if you're doing cross-border stuff, GDPR, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Compliance is very, very difficult anyway. And if we start just integrating everything, we're potentially setting ourselves up for a regulatory problem later on, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah. And obviously, with clients, you would sort of hope that certainly with my team, they would only use AI with clients in the client's environment, basically. So you wouldn't just take client data and plonk it into your own AI, please God, plonk it into your own AI system and do stuff with it, right?
Mm.
The clients generally will pay for and therefore get, the better levels of security, I would hope, than a free version. But no, you're absolutely right. As soon as you start moving information around between different softwares like that, all of a sudden you're hitting all manner of. I'm already dreading filling in my cyber essentials this year. I've added things to the mix.
There's an interesting idea called shadow AI, which is AIs that employees of organizations use that's not monitored by their organization's security policies. And it's an endemic problem in a lot of bigger companies. Some of the big tools nowadays, like things like ServiceNow and Freshworks and things like that, they've actually got methods built into these ITSM and ESM platforms for detecting shadow AI. They can kind of see when an employee might be doing it. For a smaller company, that's impossible. So you've got to be Johnny on the spot enforcing those rules with your partners and your employees.
But it's quite interesting, isn't it? So I think there is always this balancing act between security and safety and getting the job done. And I know we see it in, I was a client we had years ago, and their IT got so stringent on what they could do that they ended up having loads of WhatsApp groups, which of course is terribly not very secure for doing anything. But it's like if you lock everything down really hard, people will have to find a workaround. Like I use a client laptop and I can't screenshot, for example, or I can't do this and you can't. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, but I need that thing and I need it to be over there and I can't get it over there based on this. So I'm going to have to do something dubious, right? Like
So
screenshot it or, the more strict, there has to be that balance between the strictness to keep people safe, but IT folks generally are not terribly good at understanding. Sometimes you just got to get shit done. And there needs to be ways to get shit done that don't take 27 layers of signing into online portals and all
Got to
that kind of
balance the
stuff.
risk as well. The conversation I had this morning about Claude Co, where that's the part of Claude that sits on people's machines. It's not on the cloud or on the internet. It lives on your machine. So if you're using your client or your business co-work on your laptop and you move on to a different company, then you have to swear with your honor that you've deleted all of that stuff. But there's no way of knowing
No.
because it's on that individual's machine unless you're using the company laptop.
Yeah.
this is actually a known about cybersecurity principle. It's called the principle of least privilege, which is where you give the minimum access required to do the job. But it only works if it's very clearly, very definitely known exactly what's needed to do the job. And so say, well, the IT guys, they mess it up because they do that. The IT guys mess it up because the IT guys haven't been told properly what is actually necessary because the company probably has not assessed that. And this brings us back to what we were saying earlier on, where a lot of these companies, they just drop these systems on top of what's going on already, and they don't take the time to review it, and they don't take the time to plan, and they don't take the time to speak to each other and prepare. And you end up with a situation where you can't take a screenshot even when you really need to.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it is a balance, but also, I come at it from both sides, right? Because, I'm the one in my business who has to do the cyber essentials and make sure everyone's compliant. So I get it. They're the ones who are going to get into trouble if something goes wrong. And sometimes it's not even them, sometimes it's their clients who have rules about, right, well, data can't leave the EU or data can't leave the UK. Therefore, if so and so takes their laptop abroad, they have to have wiped X, Y, and Z before. It's not necessarily their rules, it's other people's rules. But of course, all people trying to just do their day-to-day jobs here is, oh God, these people are so annoying. Why are they making me do this? So yeah, it is a constant battle, and it's only going to get more complicated as the tech moves much quicker than the law can, right?
The EU is trying to work on that. They're updating some laws at the moment, not just the EU AI Act, but a wide range of different laws that are connected with it. And one of the things that they are trying to work on is this idea of controlling data. And we've had a data leak. That's an existential problem for us. They're trying to make it easier for small businesses to comply with this. Whether they succeed in that is a good question. But it's a known about problem anyway. It was there was a report in 2024 where this report identified these regulations as a source of anti-competitiveness in the European Union when you compare it with China, when you compare it with the UK. It was a 2024 Draghi report, I think it was. So they know about it, but can they actually fix it is a good question.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really difficult. And I think as well, your big companies, these things tend to have a sort of uh, cascade down effect, right? A bit like if you remember, I mean, you guys are in Spain. GDPR came in for you, I guess, at the same time as it did the UK, and then obviously we Brexited and caused havoc. But a lot of small businesses did not know a damn thing about GDPR. Like they were just going about their daily lives, minding their own business, and then someone said, "Oh, GDPR, why am I on your mailing list?" And they're going, "GD what? Who? How?" I think,
Sure.
and this will be a similar thing. The comms have got to be very good, and the explanations have to be very good. And bigger companies, you would hope. I mean, not necessarily. You see an awful lot of big companies having data breaches, whereas little ones, touch wood, do not. But then we don't really have much data compared to the big companies who have nice big mailing lists of people, right?
Yes.
So laws will eventually catch up. They are catching up. There's a European one. I know there's a UK one as well, trying desperately to kind of keep its little pedals going, Flintstone style, under the bonnet of AI. Lastly, we haven't touched on, but we really should because it's something, this is where people get worried and emotional about AI. Is AI going to steal our jobs? That is the question. We're already getting driverless cars in the UK. Somewhere, don't know where. So if drivers are going, do I need to retrain as a plumber?
I think it is going to take a lot of people's jobs, honestly, because it can do it. And anything that it can't do at the moment, the caveat to that is the word yes. And I would argue that the people whose jobs it's going to take are the people who are not preparing to adapt their businesses and their workflows to take it. We've already seen it. I mean, one of my main lines of business is coaching, and it's dropped by 50% since November 2024 when this stuff started to get really good. And you're going to have to be ready to diversify and pivot or include this stuff into your workflows, into your business models, and probably diversify your businesses as well, so that we're not just doing VA and we're not just doing coach and we're not just doing things like that, but we've got a few more feathers under the cap to take the slack when something falls and rises. But I think it is potentially a big problem, and if people aren't preparing for it, it's the same as like if you live in an earthquake risk area, you prepare for an earthquake, right? If you live in an AI risk area, you should be preparing for AI. And so many people are not, that they are in for a very big surprise, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
say that I've been a lot busier since AI has really kicked off. And I guess the analogy I would use is that, washing machines and dishwashers were supposed to give us more free time, but actually we're all working a lot harder. I think it's definitely taken out the busy work, but then that sort of frees you up to do all the brain work, and that's what I'm really busy with now. A conversation that Chris and I have had a few times is that the jobs that is really threatening and challenging are the entry-level jobs.
Yeah.
And the concern with that is you don't get to be experienced enough to do the brain work unless you've done the entry-level job first.
Yeah.
So there'll be a gap in the future for the people who haven't gone through that sort of training period, the difficult times, and getting that experience, who don't know how to manage your AI agents, your enthusiastic AI interns. So that is possibly a risk for the future.
Yeah, a kind of skills gap as people don't do. And I was talking to a client about this the other day actually, because they, as most people are using AI to do a lot more of the stuff that you would have an intern do, right? You chuck in some recent graduates to do the grunt work. That's kind of always been the model in consultancy to a certain extent. But those consultants doing that work are learning how stuff works around here, not necessarily just doing the job, but it's time on the ground in a client office. It's time learning how to be in the world of work. And actually, that's all really important, as well as doing the actual, doing the stuff. It might not matter at all whether you use a calculator or use your head to get that end result, but how you present it to a client matters.
But
and you're
it
not.
also goes back to knowing what that end result should look like. If you haven't ever gone through the process of getting there yourself,
Yes,
you're not going to know.
if it's
It's
any
a
good
high.
or not.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. The AI companies themselves are aware of this. I'll put again something here that might be of interest in the comments. Is Anthropic recently published the labor market impacts that they've found from companies that they've been speaking to that are using AI, and they foresee the 5-year impact being in mid-level to senior level management. But the right now impact is essentially what amounts to a hiring freeze on junior and entry level roles. So it's going to affect everybody at different stages of what's going on here. And the companies themselves are aware of that. The question that they pose at the end of this is if the traditional career model of starting at the bottom and working our way up is no longer valid, then what is going to replace it? And they don't have an answer for that in this document. And I don't think anybody really has an answer for that right now.
No, and if a bit like the whole dishwashers and hoovers and all that, everyone thought, oh my goodness, our leisure time is going to be spent doing nothing but lying around on a chaise lounge drinking martinis. Hasn't really panned out, right? But if the world of work looks like there isn't enough work for everybody, what does that look like?
This is
You
what you
know?
talk about universal basic income and things like that,
Mm.
or likely because nobody's going to give us money for nothing, I think. Or you start talking about things like civil unrest and widespread challenges and things like that. But the model that we have right now does not think into the future. The model we have right now thinks about the next quarterly result. So I think a lot of this guidance is going to come from China, where they can plan much longer ahead than we can necessarily plan here. So it's an interesting ecosystem to watch for that reason.
Why can they plan so far ahead? That's interesting.
Because they don't care what anybody thinks. No, sure. They're not going through this 2 and 4 year election cycle, so they're able to say, well, we can plan 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead, like that. And traditionally, they've been very, very good. Certainly since 1970, what was it, 1978? They've been very, very good at rolling out small scale projects, seeing that it works, moving it to a larger scale project. And because they're not enthralled to this 2 and 4 year election cycle, they're actually able to make that happen. So it's very interesting to watch what's going on in China at the moment, because we could perhaps use it as a model for how we respond to some of those threats.
Okay,
And
good.
what a real cautionary tale. How
Well,
are things going in
yeah.
China?
Yes, how are things going over there? I don't know.
Not what I would say.
No. I'm definitely considering plumbing, just as an extra skill to my bow. Maybe not plumbing. I don't
I
know.
tried retraining vocationally. I tried to become a chef. I love cooking.
Oh.
I went to culinary school, thought I was, big and clever. I'm going to go to culinary school. I'm going to do this. Actually, working as an actual chef sucks so bad.
Oh, yeah. I was a
I,
patron. Oh,
I,
horrible, horrible job. Yeah.
I would just say to anybody that is thinking, this is just from my own mistakes of my own life, of which there are numerous. If you are planning on retraining, try it first. Try it for 3 months to see if you can actually like it. Because if you don't, you're going to be in the same position, but you're going to be a plumber instead of.
Yeah, I don't want to do toilets. I only want to do clean water. But yeah, no, I always laughed when I used to watch MasterChef, because after graduating, I was a restaurant manager for years. And on MasterChef, people, slog their guts out for months and months and months, and the prize is a job in a kitchen. And I'm like, that's not a prize. That's nobody. Seriously, you get a job as a junior in a kitchen.
Manger
That's
in the kitchen.
not worth winning.
Sure. No, so try it first is the main bullet point of my long and varied list of mistakes.
Yes. I think childcare is probably out for me. Maybe a dog crash.
Life of crime.
I'm up for it. What we're going to do?
AI. I've heard good things about being a billionaire.
Me too. Me too. Although they can be quite unhappy unnecessarily based on podcasts we have done.
They don't seem very happy. No.
No,
I guess
no,
that's not the point, though.
no. I mean, it's got to take away some worries about, if your boiler breaks, but I literally did a mini pod about happiness, and there is definitely a threshold above which extra money makes not a lot of difference to your happiness. It's much more an intrinsic thing than a finance thing.
It's
So,
a dissatisfier, isn't it? It's like oxygen. You only really notice it when you don't get enough.
yeah, yes. Yes, actually, that is a really good analogy. It's very true. People only really notice money, or people who say, oh, money isn't important generally have enough.
Yep.
Whereas people who've ever struggled for money clearly know how important money is because you soon feel it if you are worried about being short of it. Yeah. Well, I think we could probably have talked about this all day. We've literally scratched the surface. I definitely keep coming back to that idea of a slot machine because I think that's I think it's a useful and the intern thing. Love the intern thing. I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. And when I deal with Claude, I will endeavour to think of it as a sort of spotty 19-year-old with bad social skills and a terror of answering the phone. I think that will help me be a more patient overlord. Oh, brilliant. But generally speaking, the people who are getting a lot out of AI are the ones who've made peace with it and understand how to use it. And if that isn't you and you're still in the scared phase, do not be in the scared phase. Just, I would say, keep playing with it. There's loads of, and there's probably too much in the way of training out there, but there is a shed load of free training out there. Claude or Anthropic have got a pile if you want to start somewhere, but there's loads. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Helen. That was a really good conversation. If you found it useful, share it with someone who's either, AI terrified or AI very happy. As always, there's a pile of links. We've discussed a few as we've gone through. We'll stick all of those in the show notes so you can go and have a look. But thanks so much for listening. Thanks, guys, for joining me. Well, that was good, wasn't it? I mean, maybe a tad scary towards the end. Sorry if that's, put the salt in your oatmeal for the day. But I've been using AI for a while now, and I still catch myself either expecting too much from it or not giving it enough context, or both, basically being a dreadful manager. I am now going to start thinking of it. I may rename it in my head and my imagination as a slightly spotty newbie intern oik. I think that will help me have conversations with it that do not involve quite so much swearing, which they're, quite often are, to be fair. But I think as minute you think of it as a new person, a junior person who's got loads of knowledge, but not a lot of context, your approach to it kind of shifts. So I definitely need to get better at briefing it. I always do check the output. That's kind of a given. Basically, don't leave it unsupervised. It's a bit like a gremlin, right? Just don't let it get on with stuff on its own. And don't be surprised when it gets things wrong because it's new, right? It's a newbie. So massive thanks to Chris and Helen for being so honest and so straight. No hype, not too much doom, I hope. Just a practical realism. And if today's episode made you want to actually do something rather than just nod along and smile, great. Try one of the things we talked about using for AI or something that you haven't tried before if you're already a regular user. Give it a proper go, not a one prompt go. Slot machine it. Think about putting in, one coin and getting out hundreds and picking the good one, right? Until next time, I'm Kathy Soulsby and this is Productivity Nerd. Thank you so much for listening.